At exactly 3:30 a.m., while most of the world still slept, a furious swarm of 250 Somali pirates in 30 high-speed skiffs surged toward the hulking frame of USNS Guadalupe, a U.S. Navy tanker loaded with over 8 million gallons of JP-5 jet fuel. In an instant, RPG warheads streaked through the blackness, AK-47 rounds lit up the night, and DSHK heavy machine gun fire hammered the deck of the American vessel. What began as a daring raid exploded into a full-blown firefight on the open sea. This was not another pirate raid for ransom. It was a bold, coordinated assault, a mini battle in the dark between an organized maritime militia and the might of the U.S. Navy. The attackers pressed in fast from multiple approaches, breaking the calm of the night with flashes of gunfire and the roar of engines. On board, sailors were jolted awake, scrambling for cover, returning fire through thick smoke and chaos. The stakes were terrifyingly high. A single penetrating shot into the fuel tanks might have turned the Guadalupe into a floating bomb. Yet, the U.S. defenders would not yield. They countered hard, sinking several pirate skiffs within minutes, and held their ground as reinforcements raced toward the commotion. What drove 250 men to risk everything in the dead of night? How did the U.S. Navy beat back such an audacious strike? In the next minutes, you'll witness the full unfolding of this shocking battle from sea to shore, from chaos to resolution. If you're ready to dive into the heart of the fight, hit subscribe to Military Power now, and join us as we unravel every twist, every shot, and every secret behind this dramatic confrontation. At the heart of this drama lies the Gulf of Aden, a thin but vital artery connecting the Indian Ocean to the Suez Canal. As a choke point in the global shipping network, it carries a staggering volume of oil, goods, and fuel. Around 10% of world maritime trade passes through its waters each year. For any attacker, controlling this passage means crippling global energy and supply chains. Into this pressure cooker stepped the scourge of Somali piracy. What began in the early 2000s as disparate groups of coastal fishermen retaliating against illegal foreign trawlers gradually evolved into well-armed networks using speedboats, RPGs, and abundant small arms. Over time, these groups transformed into near paramilitary outfits, bolstered by dark financing and cache after cache of weapons. The world once believed piracy here was tamed by naval patrols, but the embers never fully died. Then there is USNS Guadalupe. On paper, it's a fuel tanker, but to pirates, it was a prize and a potential weapon. Carrying over 8 million gallons of JP-5 jet fuel, a single direct hit into its fuel tanks could provoke a catastrophic explosion that radiates far beyond the vessel. The tanker is vulnerable by design, and that vulnerability makes it both a tempting and dangerous target. So when the alarm sounded at 3:30 a.m., the question isn't just how to repel an attack, it's whether the U.S. was prepared to withstand a sea of enemies descending in the dead of night. Would the defenses be enough to hold the line, or would this become a night to remember for tragic reasons? At first, the sea was deceptively calm. Then, out of the ink-dark horizon, 30 sleek skiffs emerged, their engines howling like predators on the hunt. Closing the distance at nearly 40 knots, the pirate fleet formed a crescent around USNS Guadalupe. Their plan was clear: encircle, overwhelm, and strike. The attack erupted almost without warning. RPG warheads lobbed into the air, spraying flame toward the tanker's superstructure. Some missed their mark entirely. One grenade drilled into open water, but the shockwaves still rocked the deck, spraying shrapnel that wounded several American sailors. Smoke curled upward, mingling with the stench of burning fuel and salt spray. All around, small boats cut through dark waves, their gun barrels aimed dead at the hull. From the deck of the Guadalupe, U.S. Navy gunners responded rapidly. Heavy .50 caliber machine guns spat streams of tracer rounds, while 20mm autocannons slammed into skiffs, inching too close. Within minutes, dozens of pirate boats were engulfed in fire, their hulls exploding, capsizing, or burning. One by one, the attackers' formations fractured under the disciplined volume of defensive fire. The night air throbbed with gunfire, clamorous and relentless. Yet as the U.S. crew began to gain upper hand, the real twist appeared. The pirate onslaught didn't relent. New waves of skiffs surged in from angles previously quiet. Some emerged from blind spots in the tanker's escort screen, others from behind low sea swells. They picked up speed, racing into the gaps carved by returning fire, hoping to exploit any breach. It became not just a frontal assault, but a multi-directional swarm. Maneuvering in the melee, the Guadalupe shifted course, trying to present its strongest armor and minimize exposed flanks. The attacking skiffs twisted and swerved in response, sometimes crossing paths dangerously close to one another. Explosions rocked the sea, debris and water columns burst upward. As a few pirate boats slipped past the immediate defensive ring, U.S. gunners tracked them even as they raked the hull with suppressive fire. The juxtaposition was brutal. On one side, the raw aggression and audacity of hundreds of pirates daring the might of a U.S. Navy vessel. On the other, the precise discipline of U.S. shipboard defense trained for this chaos. And yet, the pressure never eased, not for a second. Every moment called for split-second decisions: which target to engage first, where to hold fire, when to conserve ammo. In those tense minutes, the balance tipped slowly. Skiffs continued to fall, their attackers either dead, fleeing, or thrown into disarray. But the fight was far from over. The swarm did not break. Reinforcement waves inched closer, and more attackers pressed from unexpected flanks. The night had become a raw test of endurance, firepower, and nerve. By the time backup forces from Djibouti were en route, the confrontation at sea had already proved something. This was no ordinary pirate raid. It was an orchestrated assault on a jugular target in the dead of night against a well-armed defense. How that confrontation would escalate and how the U.S. would respond would decide the fate not just of Guadalupe, but the message sent across the Gulf of Aden. With the swarm pressing from every angle and the crews stretched to their limits, one question loomed: would help arrive in time before the tanker was overwhelmed? Just as the clash at sea seemed to tilt in favor of the U.S. defenders, a new signal cut through the chaos, a distress call crackling over encrypted channels from the Guadalupe. Back at Camp Lemonnier, Djibouti, the alarm triggered immediate reaction. This base isn't just a flag on the map, it is America's forward hub in East Africa, the nerve center for surveillance, special operations, and rapid response in the Horn of Africa. Within minutes, an MQ-9 Reaper drone rolled onto the runway. Its engines whispered to life, and then it was airborne, sensors sweeping the sea below like an all-seeing eye. From altitude, its cameras found the swarming skiffs clustered around the Guadalupe, feeding a live stream of intelligence back to commanders plotting the next strike. Almost simultaneously, the ground shuddered as AH-64 Apache gunships roared skyward, their rotor blades thrumming like war drums. Close behind, a heavy CH-47 Chinook lumbered into the air, its massive fuselage packed with an elite SEAL assault team. The transformation was immediate. Where minutes before the skies had been black and empty, now they pulsed with noise, light, and the churn of steel. The Gulf of Aden's darkness became a corridor of urgency, filled with the mechanical growl of engines and the flash of navigation beacons cutting through night. For the sailors aboard the Guadalupe, those distant silhouettes meant hope rescue had come. And with that arrival, the fight itself changed. Until now, the U.S. had fought with a defensive posture, gunners bracing themselves against waves of pirates rushing head-on. But the arrival of reinforcements shifted the balance. From altitude, the Apaches marked targets, their optics locking onto skiffs, weaving between waves. Guided by the Reaper's live intelligence feed, commanders on the Guadalupe called out firing solutions in real time. The Chinook swooped low across the water, carrying SEALs not merely to defend the ship, but to carry the battle onto land. The effect was electric. Pirate formations faltered as air support rained down. Their aggressive angles of attack wavered, their swarms scattered under precise fire from above. What had been a bloody contest of attrition now felt like a hunt, measured, coordinated, merciless. Night had already swallowed the sea, but now the U.S. forces would illuminate the battlefield on their own terms. What began as defense would become decisive offense, and what followed would expose how far the pirates were willing to go and how far the U.S. would push back. But as reinforcements surged into the fight, one question remained. Where were the pirates truly coming from? And what hidden stronghold fueled this relentless assault? Under the fading shadows of dawn, the MQ-9 Reaper's infrared cameras locked onto a sprawling complex near Barawi. What first looked like a humble fishing hamlet turned out to be a fortified pirate compound. Warehouses clustered close to the shore, rows of fuel depots glinting under covert cover, landing ramps toward the water, and vantage points for launching skiffs. This was no ad hoc hideout. It was a headquarters. Confidence surged in the U.S. command. The sea battle was only the prelude. The decision came fast. This fight would not stop at the hull of Guadalupe. It must go ashore and uproot the threat. Guided by drone feed, American warships opened fire on the fuel storage areas, shelling tanks and igniting plumes of black smoke that rose above the compound. The bombardment was precise, clearing corridors for the SEAL teams to enter. As the smoke curled from burning fuel, the magnitude of the discovery hit the commanders. These warehouses stored far more than spare parts and gasoline. Stashes of small arms, crates of RPG rounds, and ammunition belts flooded the layout, a weapons cache of astounding scale. What the Guadalupe's defenders had mistakenly treated as pirates with small arms was only the tip of a much larger arsenal. The compound held caches sufficient to equip dozens of vessels for months of attacks. The twist deepened. Intelligence suggested that this base wasn't just a support depot, but a node in a wider network supplying multiple pirate groups. Some of the weapons had likely originated from arms dealers in Yemen and Mogadishu, flowing through Hawala networks, then distributed across coastal pirate cells. As per publicly available assessments of Somali piracy, weapons used by pirates AK-47, RPG-7, machine guns are often traced to such paths. Below the roar of naval fire, SEAL teams braced at insertion points. That moment, the mission had evolved from defensive survival to strategic annihilation. The sea had drawn blood. Now, the land would bleed. If the compound held enough firepower to sustain further waves of attacks, eliminating it could break the spine of this network. The map of the compound revealed supply lines and hidden tunnels. Some skiffs appeared to be maintained on dry land, others poised to launch quickly. Drone spots updated in real time, guiding the teams through the labyrinth of sheds, bunkers, and pipelines. Each doorway kicked open with caution. Each corner might conceal ambushing snipers or booby traps. By the time the naval guns ceased their bombardment, smoke and flame obscured much of the target zone. The SEALs, sidling through the haze, secured perimeters and shut down fuel lines. They destroyed crates of rockets, reset detonators, and detonated munition bunkers in controlled blasts. In every erupting fireball, the scale of the threat became clearer. When daylight truly broke, the compound lay in ruins. Its stores of weaponry were shattered, its infrastructure compromised, and its role as a pirate stronghold stripped bare. The sea battle had been violent. The land assault had been surgical. What began as an audacious attack on a tanker had exposed an entrenched network. In this instant, one question hovered. How many more such compounds existed, hidden in coastal shadows, ready to strike again? And how far would the U.S. go to hunt them down sea, air, and land? As first light strained at the horizon, the battle shifted from sea to land. The roar of rotors had faded, and now a CH-47 Chinook descended into the compound's perimeter, disgorging roughly 200 Navy SEALs into the ash and dust of Barawi's fortified base. The air was thick with smoke from naval bombardment, and the ground beneath boots was stained with fuel, debris, and shards of shattered crates. In that moment, the firefight erupted anew, only now it was lethal, close, and merciless. From within darkened warehouses, RPGs cracked open doorways, spewing flame into corridors. Gun turrets mounted on pickup trucks unleashed bursts of automatic fire at advancing SEALs. The attackers used every narrow passage, every shadow and crate to ambush, to stall. In return, the SEALs responded with precision, rifles blazing, flashbangs thrown to disorient, stun grenades thrown into corners, and grenades deployed to clear rooms. Movement was fast, brutal. Every hallway could conceal a sniper, every crate a trap. Behind that chaos was strategy. Teams split to cordon off zones, prevent escape, and secure key objectives. One element rushed toward hostages held near the heart of the complex, among them American and Allied sailors from the Guadalupe. In the confusion, gunfire echoed across concrete corridors as SEALs closed in. In one tense standoff, a pirate with a rocket launcher aimed at captives. A SEAL sniper dropped him in the nick of time. By dawn, the compound had been largely neutralized. The SEALs demolished 12 warehouses, inserted explosive charges, severed pipelines, and saturated ammunition depots with destruction. They crushed over 15 tons of weapons and fuel, eliminating stockpiles that could have fueled countless future raids. In the process, 90 pirates were killed in combat, 60 more were taken alive, and further downstream figures would tally over 180 killed and approximately 150 captured across the entire battle. Casualties on the U.S. side remained minimal, a testament to the careful planning, fire superiority, and coordination between sea and land forces. Guadalupe survived with moderate damage, but the broader objective had been achieved. The removal of the pirates' core infrastructure, the decimation of their weapon caches, and the liberation of hostages. Yet even as the smoke cleared, questions hung in the heavy morning air. How many compound rings remained along Somalia's coast? How deeply did these arms networks penetrate? And perhaps, most haunting, did this victory mark the beginning of the end for the pirate scourge, or merely spark its transformation? This SEAL strike was no rescue, it was a decisive blow. What remains is to understand its strategic ripple, and whether the U.S. response would carry through in force. When the gunfire finally faded and the smoke drifted out to sea, the USNS Guadalupe was still afloat. Its deck bore scars, its crew counted the wounded, but the ship remained on mission, resuming fuel delivery to the carrier group waiting beyond the horizon. For Washington, this survival mattered as much as the destruction inflicted on the pirates. It meant continuity of operations and proof that an ambush of this scale could not derail U.S. naval logistics. In the hours that followed, intelligence officers sifted through the ruins of Barawi's compound. What they uncovered pointed to something far larger than a rogue flotilla. According to open assessments on Somali piracy, many of the weapons recovered RPG-7s, heavy machine guns, even fresh ammunition crates, matched supply routes traced through Yemen and the Horn of Africa. This suggested that the strike was not simply about piracy, but about networks of foreign suppliers, financiers, and traffickers who had turned coastal raiding into paramilitary business. The U.S. response carried its own unmistakable message. By defending a tanker and then dismantling the infrastructure behind the attack, the Navy demonstrated that threats at sea would not only be repelled, but pursued to their roots. It was deterrence, written in fire and steel. Now the question lingers. Does this mark the final collapse of Somalia's pirate era? Or will these groups adapt, fueled by shadowbackers, into something even more dangerous? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to Military Power for more untold stories from the front lines of modern conflict.